Okay, so we're going to begin by thinking about the eyeball as just that, a ball or a sphere. So you've had practice drawing the sphere before, but I want to make sure that you're clear that when you're drawing the eye, what you're actually drawing is a part of a sphere. So here I am wrapping around the sphere the actual eyelid and lower lid, and there's a little bit of that corner of the eye right there, and it's sticking out kind of like a little ball all of its own within the eye itself. So what you need to understand is the eyelid is a little bit of a thick material. When there's light shining down on it, like there is here, it will cast a shadow onto the white of the eye. You can kind of see a curved shadow here. If I rotate it, you'll see it even more prominently. But that happens on almost every eye you see. There's a little bit of a cast shadow there onto the white of the eye. And here it's rotated, you can see a little bit more. So when you do your drawing, you're going to have a cast shadow from the upper lid onto the white of the eye itself. So we're going to start by drawing a sphere. I've left you a little stencil within your envelope on your desk, your colored envelope. There's only one, so you're going to have to quickly trace it, hand it off to the next person at your table. You're going to be doing this pretty lightly. Don't press really hard. Remember, a hard outline means you're going to have a flat shape instead of a nice form. So you want to think about this in terms of where your form shadow is. You don't have to have a cast shadow on this because we are thinking of this as an eyeball. You're not going to have an eyeball just loose on a table. It would theoretically be embedded. Shadow, it's a gradual shift from light to dark as the sphere itself kind of bends away from the light. So you may think of a eyeball, the light part of the eyeball being white, and it is, but in certain parts it's going to have some gray to it because it's a sphere, because it's turning away from the light. It's also a really shiny ball, so it's going to have a highlight, a glistening highlight. Different than if you're doing like an apple, it'll be a little bit more shiny than that. So I'm going to go ahead and speed this up so you can see the end result. I'm confident you can do most of this on your own and you can nail it. Okay, here's the stage where you're going to start to introduce your white. Just like with the charcoal pencil, you're going to be keeping the red away from the white. You're never going to overlap the two. You're actually going to keep a healthy distance in between the two using the gray of your paper. And you've noticed that we're using only two pencils here. We're not alternating between like a 2B to a 4B to a 6B. This is all about pressure. The amount of pressure you put on there will increase how dark or how vivid your color is. If you use less pressure, you'll get a lighter shade or a darker shade. Okay, so now we're going to actually draw an eye onto the sphere. So we're going to start with the iris, and the iris is the colored part of your eye. You're making it into a circle, so it's perfectly circular, right in the center of your eyeball. And then there is a pupil, kind of like a little target dead center of the iris. So the pupil is that black dot in the middle of your eye. Everyone has one. It expands and shrinks depending on what kind of lighting you're in. So this is going to be kind of a creepy eyeball at first until we actually put the eyelid and upper eyelid and lower eyelid on there. So for this type of shading, we're just going to shade the iris in. So again, that's the color part of your eye. If you look really closely at the eye itself, usually the edge or the rim of the iris is darker and it gets lighter as it goes in towards the center. Everyone's eye is a little bit different. There are patterns within the eye. You really don't need to worry about the patterns within the eye for now. You do want to be conscious of the fact that there's going to be a highlight, and the highlight usually takes place on or near the iris. So there's a patchy part up there, up to the, looks like upper left. That's where the highlight is going to be. So there's a reason why I haven't filled it in there. So I'm making that pupil a little bit darker. The pupil is usually the darkest area there. To fill in really tiny spaces, it's not a bad idea to use little ovals. That's one way you can fill in a tight space. Or you can just go back and forth or try to go in different directions is okay. Okay, so now you're going to go in using the white pencil. I'm just going to erase out any on top. If there's any existing red, remember you don't want to have any red and white overlap. You want them separate. So now you can go back in and you can punch in the highlight. So you want that to be an area of contrast right there. So it looks like a sparkle within the eye. So I'm pressing really hard when I'm doing that. That way it should look like the eye is a little bit wet or glossy, which is normal. The eye needs to be wet. So now it's starting to look like an eyeball. So now we're going to actually draw the upper eyelid right on top. So that you know the upper eyelid, the top part looks like the top half of a football, and the bottom half looks like the bottom half of a football. So it's kind of, it's open, but it's like a narrow football, kind of one that's a little bit distorted. You really want the top lid to touch or a little bit go over the iris. You want the bottom lid to just about touch the iris. So it should really be touching on the top and almost or actually touching on the bottom. If you have too much distance between the iris and the lid, it's going to make your person look freaked out. So it really helps to put the upper lid and lower lid on there. Now it's starting to look like an eyeball, kind of creepy one, but hey, we don't have the crease on the lid or any of those things. You'll be learning that next lesson. So I am darkening the upper lid. Usually the upper lid is darker. It's got the longer lashes. The lashes tend to be darker on the top lid versus the bottom.